Hello everyone and welcome to Learn Japanese Kanji with Memory Techniques, episode 1. Today we're going to be learning some common kanji which you will see on a day-to-day basis if you're planning on going to Japan, or if you're planning on reading manga or Japanese novels, or even if you're just wanting to watch Japanese media with Japanese subtitles to work on your reading skill. Then learning more kanji is going to really help here, and these are a lot of common kanji that we're going to be learning. So we'll go ahead and open the presentation here. And yeah, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So as it says here, the slides are in the description. So if you want to do some revision afterwards, you can certainly do that. And also, if you want to learn all the 1,000 most common kanji in Japanese, so that's JLPT N5 all the way up to JLPT N2, make sure to check out my 1,000 kanji 90-day challenge, which is just the top link in the description below, if you really want to level up your kanji game. So let's go ahead and move on to the first kanji here, which is I. And you can see it looks almost a bit like a ladder. And yeah, it's just got these two lines in the middle here, and it creates kind of three boxes like that. And some common words which you'll see with this kanji, first of all, on its own is just me, which just means I, like this. And then we've also got me dama, which is combining the kanji for I with the kanji for ball to literally make eyeball, right? And there's a couple of similar looking kanji to look out for here. First of all, this one here on the left, we've got sun, which you might recognize if you've done a bit of Japanese. And yeah, you can see this one's only got one line instead of the usual two, which I has here. So you're just going to want to be careful for that one. And on the right here, this one looks quite similar as well. You can see it's got the same amount of lines as I here, but it's got a longer top and bottom stroke. So that's just something to keep in mind. And that there means ear. So how I like to think of it is just a 90-degree turned eye, and I believe this is the more accurate way of thinking of it. This is like going into the history of the kanji, because originally this kanji used to be turned the other way around, and pretty much how it would be is you can see this box at the top here was supposed to represent kind of the sclera, and the same would be for this bottom box. If you don't know what sclera is, it's just the white of your eye. And then you can see this middle box here is almost supposed to represent the iris, so the main part of the eye. And yeah, it used to be turned the other way, so it makes a little bit more sense, but it still means I, it's just been turned around through the evolution of the language. And yeah, so now what we're going to do is we're going to pause the video and practice writing it out, because this is really good for helping build good muscle memory for learning the kanji on top of memory techniques and things like that. And I just found it really useful and an essential part of learning kanji for me personally. If you really don't want to, then please feel free to skip it. And also, if you don't have any pen or paper, please feel free to check out the first link in the description, which will take you to this website here called Clayki. And then you can very easily go ahead and start drawing on your computer just with your mouse. Or you can also use it on your phone as well, which is pretty cool. And if you're watching this video on your phone and you don't have any pen or paper, but you want to do the writing practice, something you can maybe go ahead and do is after this video, you can go to the description and download the slides, and you can just do your writing practice afterwards instead. But if you're not really wanting to do any writing practice, don't worry, you can still learn kanji without it. It's a good tool to help really increase your memorization of these kanji. So yeah, once you've gone ahead and practiced writing those out a few times, go ahead and play the video. And now I want you to go ahead and challenge yourself and try it from memory. So best of luck, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, which is C. So you can see this one at the top here looks a little bit familiar, and that's just the kanji we've just done. That's the kanji for I. And then underneath we have these kind of two weird shapes here. They almost look like an L shape here. And yeah, these are supposed to represent legs, as you'll see in a minute. And some common words you'll see with this kanji. First of all, we've got the word, which is a verb, which means to see, and that is miru. For example, if you wanted to say, I watch a movie in Japanese, then you could just say, eiga o miru. And you can use this for a lot of different cases, so it can just be for anything that you're looking at or seeing. And then on the right here, we've got another common word, which is miseru, which is more like to show something, so to show. And yeah, those are some common words there. And you can see that if I break down this kanji, first of all, we've got this kanji for I, which if you remember, we just memorized it by thinking it's like a 90-degree turned eye. So you can see the top box here is like the white part of the eye, and so is the bottom part. Then this middle part here is almost like the iris, like the main part of the eye. And then the second component, or the second radical, as we call it in Japanese. So when we split Japanese kanji up like this, we call it splitting up into radicals. So each of these different components is like a radical. And this second radical here is called legs. Now, this isn't really a radical, which would be its own kanji on its own. This is like a radical which you'll only really see inside of more complex kanji, like this one. So this just means legs, and how I like to think of it is, if any of you are familiar with something called silent movies, it's like a really old type of movie that used to be present a lot in the Victorian age here in the UK. And yeah, there was a famous person called Charlie Chaplin, who was a comedy film star at the time, and yeah, he used to always put his legs out like this to try and be funny. And if you look at the way his feet are positioned, and then you look at this kanji here, you can see it looks very similar. So that's how I like to remember it. And how I like to remember the entire kanji is I like to think of it as like an eye with legs watching the TV. And yeah, that's just a very simple way of thinking of it, but it's quite a memorable looking image. I mean, look at this, it's quite weird. It's like an eyeball and legs watching TV. So that could be one way you remember it, and that's how I like to remember it personally. If you want to think of another way to remember it, you could also think of how like it's an eye with legs, so it's an eye that's moving around to look and do something. So it's like a eye that's doing something. And yeah, that's just a couple of ways you could think of it. And now we'll go ahead and we'll pause the video, and this time we'll try writing out this kanji here. So again, we're just going to want to try and follow the basic stroke order. So the reason why stroke order is useful is just it makes the kanji look a lot more neat and tidy. You'll also see in these Kakejun images that we have a blue box around the outside. And this has been made thanks to kakejun.com, which is a brilliant free resource which you can go and check out. And I'll leave the link in the description for that if you're interested. And yeah, the reason why they have this blue box is this is something that you might want to try and visualize when you're actually writing out kanji, and that just helps keep it neat. So of course, doing things neatly isn't important. I mean, like when we're writing English, we don't exactly have to keep it neat and tidy necessarily, but it's still good practice, and it can definitely make it look a lot more nicer if you want to get really good at writing kanji. So that's something you can try visualize in your head if you like, if you want to get better at writing neater kanji. And yeah, now let's go ahead and pause the video, and we'll try and write out from memory. So best of luck, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, which is tree. So this one is a pictograph, as it looks a lot like a tree. So a pictograph kanji is just a kanji that looks a lot like what's supposed to represent. So yeah, you can see how it looks quite similar to a tree. We've got some branches here, and then we've got a nice trunk in the middle. And on its own, it's just ki, which just means tree. So to remember this, I like to just think of like a tree in the shape of a house key or something like that. So that's quite a nice, easy way to remember it. And we've also got a day of the week here, which is mokuyobi. And yeah, this is actually kind of referring to Jupiter here, because in Japanese, the word mokusei means Jupiter. And so mokuyobi, meaning Thursday, was taken from that word mokusei. So when you think of Thursday, you could think of it as like the day of tree, but you could also think of it as like the day of Jupiter as well. So that's a little fun fact there for you. And yeah, this is how I like to remember this kanji. Is I just created a nice image here for you guys, which is just, it's got branches and we've got loads of leaves and stuff. It's just to really help visualize that idea of that this kanji looks like a tree. And yeah, now let's go ahead and practice writing this one out. So feel free to pause the video, and we're just going to work one stroke at a time here. And nice and easy one, so make sure practice it a couple times. And then once you've done that, or if you're just going to skip the writing, which is all right if that's what you want to do, we can now go ahead and try it from memory. So best of luck. And yeah, you'll see I didn't put a hint here for this one because I feel like this one's fairly easy, so I don't think you'll need a hint for this one. And yeah, we'll move on to the next page here, where we've got something which is a little bit more challenging, but it's using two of the kanji we've already learned. And if you remember, when we're using kanji inside of a more complex kanji, they're called radicals. So this tree kanji here is actually a radical, and so is this kanji for I. It's acting as a radical for this kanji. And the meaning of this kanji here is just mutual. And so you can see a few common words here, which you might recognize some of these if you've been learning Japanese for a while. First of all, we've got aite, which is like a partner, but it can also kind of mean opponent as well. So like in a fighting match, for example, because I do judo, for example, when I'm like fighting an opponent, you could say that's like my aite, that's like my opponent. And then we've also got this word here, which is sodan, which just means consultation. And yeah, so those are a couple of common words there. And you can see if we break this down again, we've just got the kanji for tree, which I just like to remember like this. It just looks like a tree. And then we've got the kanji for eye, which if you remember, I just like to think of it as a 90-degree turned eye. So we've got the top and bottom boxes are like representing the sclera, which is the white part of the eye. Then this middle box here is almost representing the iris, or the main part of the eye. And yeah, here we go. This is the invented meaning which I came up with, which is just, it's an eye and a tree shake hands as they mutually respect each other. So maybe a little bit of a stretch for that meaning, but I feel like it sticks in my brain pretty well. So hopefully it does for you as well. And yeah, I just went ahead and threw together this image in Adobe Express. It's just an eyeball and a tree shaking hands. So a bit of a strange image, but usually the stranger these images are, the more they stick in your brain, which is a good thing because we're trying to remember here. So anything that sticks in your brain is good. And yeah, now let's go ahead and pause the video and practice writing it out. So since this is like our first more complex kanji here, one thing to just keep in mind is that we work one component at a time. So you can see how we're starting with the component for tree first, or the radical for tree. And then we're going to go ahead and work with the radical for eye next. So if you know the stroke order, or if you know how to draw both of these kanji, you should have no trouble at all being able to draw both of them together. And yeah, once you've gone ahead and practiced that a few times, and we'll go ahead and move on to trying it out from memory. So best of luck. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next kanji, which is small. So this is a very common kanji here, which you'll see a lot. And it's got quite a simple structure. It's just got this kind of hook here, and it's got two dashes at the side. So one common word you'll see is chisai, which just means small. And sometimes you can see a very similar adjective to this one, which is chisana. And this is just another way of saying small, so that's a fun fact for you. But just keep in mind that if it's chisana, it's only going to be in front of a noun. So just keep that in mind. I would recommend looking into the difference between those two if you're not feeling too confident, as it's quite an important thing to know about for, I believe, JLPT 5. So just make sure you are aware that there's two different ways of doing this adjective for that. And on the right here, you can see we've got shogakko, which is elementary school. And so it literally just means small school. So gakko means school, and sho here is meaning small. So it's a small school. And yeah, then we've got some opposites here. So you can see on the right, we've got this kanji for big. And this almost looks like the kanji for person, but then they've got their arms stretched out like this. So I like to think that it's just a person, big person taking up loads of space. But the focus just now is not on this kanji, but I thought I'd just throw it in there just to make you aware of the opposite. And yeah, then we've got small on the left. So how I like to think of it is just a small arrowhead. So the reason why is if you have a look at this kanji, you can see it almost looks a bit like an arrowhead. So you can see it's kind of a point, it's like an arrow going up like this. So I like to just think of it as like an arrowhead, or a small arrowhead. So I've just put together an image here of just a really big bow and like a really small arrow. So obviously this arrow wouldn't really fit in this bow too well. And that extreme contrast really helps you remember things. So contrast is another way you can try and improve your memory when using these memory techniques to learn kanji. Contrast is just a great way to exaggerate things and make things stick in your head a little bit more. And next up, let's go ahead and pause the video and practice writing this out a few times. So for this one, make sure to just start with the middle stroke first, which is just a line and a hook. And then we've got the two lines at each side, and that will make the kanji for small. Next up, let's now go ahead and try write out from memory. So best of luck with that. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next page, which is prefecture. So this is probably the hardest kanji that we've done today, but it's made up all of kanji that we've learned already. So please don't be too intimidated by it. You can see at the top here, we've got that kanji for eye. And at the bottom here, we've actually got that kanji for small that we were just learning. And it's just been simplified, so it's been squashed in a little bit. And then you've also got this kind of L shape here, and I just think of it as an L shape. And you'll see kind of how I use that to remember this kanji in a minute. And so yeah, this kanji means prefecture, and on its own is ken, which is just prefecture. And then I've also got another word here, which is kenmin, which is prefectural citizens. So quite a mouthful there. And yeah, as you can see, it's broken down into this kanji here, which is the kanji for eye, which if you remember, we just think of it as a 90-degree turned eye. So the top and bottom boxes here are representing the white part of the eye, or the sclera. And the middle part here is representing the iris, so the main part of the eye. And then we've got this kanji here, which is small. So remember, that was the bottom part of the kanji. And yeah, we just like to think of this as a small arrowhead, because if you have a look at this kanji, it kind of looks like it's pointing up a bit like an arrow. And I've made the arrow much smaller in the bow, just to make the contrast and to really show that the meaning is small. And this is the invented meaning, which I've come up with for the kanji for prefecture. So I like to think of it as it's just a man looking at a small sign of all the prefectures in Japan. So you can see there's a little map here, and that's got all the prefectures. And so you might be thinking, well, where does this kind of L shape part of the prefecture kanji come in? And if you have a look at all the prefectures of Japan, it kind of looks like an L. Now, I know it's the other way around, but for most people, you should be able to just think like, oh, okay, it looks like an L shape. So that's how I like to think of it. And yeah, it's just like a man looking at a small sign. And the reason why we say looking is because the first part of the kanji is eye. So eye is associated with looking at things. So that's how I like to remember this kanji. And hopefully that sticks well for you as well. And now we'll go ahead and practice writing this one out. So again, we're going to be working one component at a time when following the stroke order. So we'll start off by writing out the I component. Then we'll do the L part here. And then we'll finish off with the small component here. And once we've done that, we'll have the kanji for prefecture. So please feel free to practice writing that out a few times. And then once you're done, we'll go ahead and move on to the next page here, where we'll go ahead and try write out from memory. So best of luck. And yeah, that just about covers it. But again, if you want to learn more, then please feel free to check out the first link in the description below. And you could go ahead and try our 1000 kanji 90-day challenge. So can you rise to the occasion? That's just some text there, which I thought would make it sound a little bit more epic. But essentially, this is just a challenge to teach you all of the 1000 common kanji. So that's JLPT N5 all the way up to N2. And it's all step by step and guided with plenty of examples, just like this. But it also has some additional things like explanations of the kanji reading system, other memory techniques you can use, as well as revision resources like pre-made Anki decks and flashcards and things like that. So you can also get your revision covered as well. So if that sounds good to you, feel free to check that out in the description below. But apart from that, I would just like to thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Take care.